Thank you for tuning in today for another program of Glory Bound. We are here to share the gospel of Jesus Christ through the preaching of God's holy word and Christ-centered music. Our desire is to encourage and uplift those that need a special touch from our Savior. Join us now for another blessed program of Glory Bound.
Hello and welcome to Glory Bound. Today we have a very special program. It's a little different than what we normally have, but we have a special guest who's been wanting to come on for some time to just give his testimony. Culy. Kevin has been on Glory Bound several times before. And unfortunately, Kevin is one of these that caught COVID and was in the hospital for several months, was on the ventilator, and he's gonna just give you his testimony and his experience, what he's been through, and how God has brought him through all this today. So I'm anxious and I'm thrilled to have Kevin with us. So Kevin, welcome to Glory Bound. And we're really wanting to know how God worked this all in you, how He worked in your life through all this, because you were out of it for how many months and everything, but let's just kind of go right back to the beginning when you came down with COVID.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm always excited to be here. Normally, I talk about matters of addiction.
Yes, you do.
Yeah. And I address that a lot. And I'm very comfortable with that issue. But like you said, I come down with COVID. I was one of those guys that looked at COVID like, oh, this is a joke. I'll wear the mask when I have to wear the mask and blah, blah, blah. But I didn't take it seriously, that's for sure. And I probably should have. But I came down with it and I put off going to the hospital when I first got it. I knew I had it, but my work told me to stay home for 2 weeks, and I did that. But at the end of the 2 weeks, almost the 14th day, I became very ill, and I knew something was wrong. And so I walked into the living room, sat down in the chair, and told my wife, "You got to call the doctor. You got to call the ambulance. I can't make it to the car to go to the hospital." So she did, and the ambulance came, and first thing they did was check my oxygen level.
Yes.
And because with COVID, your oxygen level can go down if you have it serious. They checked it, and it was at 60.
Wow.
Yeah, and so, if you're in the 70s, you're in bad shape.
Because I think once it drops below 90, they even get concerned.
Right, yeah. So if you're in the 70s, they start getting pretty concerned. They start having a lot of red flags. Well, mine was at 60, and I remember telling the ambulance driver, I don't need that. I don't need that stretcher. I can walk, or whatever. He said, "Son, you're dying." And that's just how he put it.
Very blunt.
Yeah, very blunt. He just said, "Son, you're dying. Lay down on a stretcher. We got to go." And that's the last thing I remember for a solid month and a half. I was out. I was unconscious, and I had a lot of hallucinations. I had a lot of just seeing things that weren't there, hearing things that weren't there. It was very bizarre and scary, There was such a missing piece of the puzzle there when I started putting all this together to go out to churches and speak about this, because my ultimate goal is to give people hope. Not just people who've had COVID, but anybody that's going through a tough time that needs a miracle. My ultimate goal is to give them hope, because God still does miracles. you know.
Yes.
But there was such a huge gap missing in that month and a half. One of the things I did was I asked my girls, because they were very involved with this whole situation. They were driving down to Indy all the time to see me. And a lot of that time they couldn't see me at all. They weren't allowed in the room. And my wife was too. She was there constantly. And I asked the girls to write down what they remember most about me going through COVID, you know, how it affected them, you know. And they did.
So, but when you went to the hospital, when they took you there, did they put you on the vent right away?
Pretty quick, right, Dee? Yeah, pretty quick. And it was, there are bits and pieces that I remember, and I do remember the doctor asking me if I would go on the vent, you know. And I do remember not being crazy about that idea. I had somewhat of an idea what that meant when they put you on that, and none of them's good.
Yes.
You know.
Right.
And so, yeah, they put me on the vent almost right away. They took me to Ball first, Ball Memorial in Muncie, and Ball right away knew that they were in over their heads with me. Everything that I needed was going to be supplied by a bigger hospital. They just didn't have the doctors and the staff for what I had. What I had was 3 different types of pneumonia and COVID, and so it was like having, you know, you talk about that nail in the coffin, and I had 4 nails in that coffin, and they were all very, very bad.
So they transferred you where?
They tried almost right away to transfer me to Indy. That's what their ultimate goal was. You know, Indy couldn't take me. They don't, at that time, if you remember, COVID was a big deal. You know, everybody had to wear masks and
Yes.
and the whole bit. So you couldn't get into Indy right away. They were just full. Every floor they had was a different floor dedicated to nothing but COVID in the Methodist hospital. And so it depended on how sick you were as to what floor they put you in. And when they actually did get me, when I was lifelined there, it was a tough situation because the doctor called Dee in, and he told her to call the family in, and he said, "Look, we're flying him to Indy today, but he's not going to survive that flight. And it's just a last-ditch effort, you know. But we don't want to stand here and say we didn't try, you know. So we're going to put him on that helicopter, but he's not going to survive that flight." And so I don't remember it, but my wife had to come in and say her goodbyes, you know. And the children had to come in and say their goodbyes. And I was so sick, I remember Dee telling me later, they allowed her about 10 minutes to sum up what she wanted to say, her last words to me, you know. So she had
Do
about
you remember anything
nothing
that she said?
I don't remember a thing.
Okay. Because you wondered, do they hear? Do they not hear when
No,
they're out of it?
no, I had no idea. My hallucinations were so bad, I thought I was a police officer in Muncie.
And you know, I've heard that before when I guess it's the drugs they have you on, that it
Yeah.
causes the hallucinations and
Yeah.
all
So
kinds
you're totally
of
not,
things.
you are not there, you know. So I don't remember any of it. But she had to come in and say goodbye. The girls had to come in and say goodbye. They gave Dee about 10 minutes, like I said. They gave, I can't even imagine what this was like for my girls, but they allowed them 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
Yeah. What do you say to your dad in 30 seconds? You know, knowing this will be the last time you ever talk to him, you know, what do you say in 30 seconds? I can't imagine what that was like for them. But they, you know, they went through that. And when we got to Indy, Dee had to have. I survived the flight, obviously, you know, and they got me on the floor with the worst patients, and if I forget to, I want to share this now in case I forget later. But everybody on that floor died. That I was on, except for one other young man. He survived it, and I survived it. But the floor that we were on was for the worst of the worst, you know, and that's where they stuck me. And Dee had to have a code word so she could call the hospital and find out how I'm doing. You know, she'd give them this code word, and they would know it was Dee, you know. Well, the code word, I didn't find this out until I got out of there, but the code word was believe.
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 Oh, ironic.
And I thought, how ironic.
Yeah.
Because I tease Dee about this all the time, but really I think it's pretty cool. We have believe signs everywhere in our house, you know. And just the word believe, that's it, you know. But it's one day I was like, I'm going to count these signs up, you know. How many signs has she got in this house, you know, to say believe? So I counted them up. It was over 50 signs.
Oh, my goodness.
You know, and that gets drilled into your head.
Yes.
You know, it really does. And you know, during that whole time, I had a Bible beside me, you know, when I started to come to. And the funny thing is, I never picked it up and read it the whole time. What I did do was I laid there, because I had a lot of quiet downtime, you know, and I just said, God, you know, I don't know if I'm going to live or die. I don't know, you know. And every time I would ask the doctors, hey, am I going to die? Be real with me, you know. And they would honestly say, Kevin, we don't know. You may die, you know. You may not make it. And so I spent my time in prayer. That's what I did. I know the Bible. I've been reading it forever, you know. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying don't read
Right.
it, but there was a point there when I was in that hospital. I had to connect with God, you know. I had to have something, you know. I needed something that I could grab a hold of and hang on to while I'm in that hospital. Something that is tangible, you know. I needed God to speak to me. And he did. And what the word that I got was simply this: it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. You know, I remember when I first felt God speak that to me, I was like, okay, but am I going to die? I want to know, am I going to die? You know?
Yeah.
And then I'd hear that word again in my heart. It's going to be okay.
And you know, that period of time, I mean, it has to be so lonely, because you cannot have any visitors.
Yeah.
I mean, you're there by yourself. And I always felt bad for I don't know how these people, you know, that are in the hospital and they're sick and they can have no family with them.
Right.
I mean, to me, that would be, I had to go in one time, and because of the COVID, I mean, you know, it wasn't as bad, but they were not allowing visitors, and I had to stay overnight till the next day, and I was like, get me out of here. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, I could use my phone and talk to him or text, but nobody, you know, nobody can come in and see you, and it gets...
I think that's one of the big mistakes they made when COVID came about, was just that very thing. We didn't, I lost that human touch, you know. They had me locked down in a room that was a glass room, and nobody allowed in, you know,
Yep.
except for nurses and hazmat outfits, you know.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the human touch. And boy, you're right, you miss that.
Yeah.
When you're in there, you miss that.
Yeah, and I've heard that before with some people, and, because it's just like if you just had somebody that gives you the encouragement, it makes you fight.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to hang in there more and not give up. But when you're just there and there's no one, but I mean, think of these people that are not saved. They don't have the Lord in their life.
Oh, yeah.
How do they deal with that?
Yeah. I honestly don't know what they do. Where they?
Because they have nobody to go to.
You can't turn to your wife. Can't turn to your children. You can't. The nurses are the nurses on that floor were so overworked. I can't say enough good things about them, but they had no time for chit chat. And
Yeah.
So, I found out about halfway through it. I don't know if they knew it before, but they told me about halfway through it. So I had the 3 pneumonias. I had COVID, and then the doctor comes in and he goes, my toes were solid black. It looked like I'd been climbing a mountain and got frostbite, And doctor comes in and he goes, you got blood clots in your leg. And that's serious.
Yes, it is.
That is very serious. And he said, that's why your toes are black. But he just flat out told me, he said, Kevin, I don't know what to tell you with this, but we can't do anything about the blood clots in the legs right now. We've got to focus on the pneumonia and the COVID. That's going to kill you quicker than the blood clots. But he said, I'm just telling you so you'll know if the pneumonia doesn't get you, the blood clots are probably going to, And so I'm like, geez, man, there's 2 strikes against me, And I did end up losing some toes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they did end up having to amputate toes. They called it COVID toe. It was so common down there. A lot of patients were losing part of their feet.
Yeah, and that is true. Clots that are in your leg go to your feet. They also have some where the clots, their fingers.
Mm-hmm.
Now my husband had that problem with the COVID. Had caused a blood clot in his hand, which blocked. They thought he probably going to lose a couple fingers, but fortunately, he did not.
Yeah.
He just lost the tip of the one, but very, very painful.
It is. It is. I could not believe how painful it was to have the toes amputated. I thought I had a pretty high tolerance for pain, but my gosh, it was I can't describe it. It was painful going through that, because then I had to learn to walk again. I had just started to learn to walk when they finally decided, we're going to take these toes off. So when they took the toes off, then now I've got to learn to walk without the toes, and you'd be surprised how much balance comes from your toes. And so all that was gone, and I had to learn to do it, again. And I try to find a way to laugh at it after I'm done feeling sorry for myself. I try to find a way to laugh at it, and it's an advantage because it's 4 or 5 less toes I got to trim. I don't have toenails,
Okay.
And so that's a plus. That's a plus, And
I think I'd rather trim than lose the
Yeah.
toes, but
it's a great conversational piece. If I wear flip flops where my toes are exposed, and I go to a picnic or a party or something, and I cross my legs like I am now, and it's a great conversational piece, So, you if you don't find a way to laugh at yourself and man, you're going to be in a pit for your whole entire life, I'd much rather find a way to laugh at it.
yeah.
Probably about halfway through this, the doctors had no hope for me. Okay, I always thought doctors were supposed to give us hope, as best as they can, But
Yes.
they gave us no hope, and they took Dee aside. They called the family in, and they started talking about what they called quality of life. And their definition of quality of life is he doesn't have it here in the hospital, good quality. He's not going to have it when he leaves here. They come right out and said he'll never walk again. He will probably be somewhat of just bedridden in a nursing home when he does leave here. And so his quality of life is pretty much zero. And so their plan, their idea of addressing that was just unhook me and let me go, And that was the way they wanted to handle it. Fortunately for me, my family is kind of like a little gang, and we are very, very tight. And, they brought that up. My brother was like, oh, nah, let's go to plan B, pal. We're not doing that, If he dies on life support, then he dies. But we're not going to unplug him. We're going to give him a chance to fight, And Dee was the same way. Dee was vicious. They were ready to unplug me. They were ready to turn me off. They even went as far, and I do remember this part. They went as far as they advised Dee, you need to go in and talk to him about his funeral and make some funeral plans. If there's anything that he wants, it would be way more special if he could tell you what he wants. So I remember telling her I picked out a couple songs that I wanted played. I picked out a pastor that I wanted to preach. I wanted a gospel preacher, somebody that would share the gospel when he spoke. And I wanted it done cheap. That was my bottom line. Hey, this world is not my home, and I really come to understand that going through COVID. This is not. I'm supposed to be with God. We all are, and eventually we'll get there, But this is not our home, and so why have an expensive funeral, It just makes no sense whatsoever in the world to me. So I told her, cheap, make it cheap. Preacher's got to be somebody that do it for free, and he's got to have a heart for God, for the gospel, And so we did that. We planned it as best as we could, but just a couple days after that, I had a turnaround. For whatever reason, the physical therapist came in and said, because I wasn't getting really any physical therapy. It wasn't in my insurance, so I wasn't getting much, And but I was getting a little. And a physical therapist came in, and right after all this went down, and he said, hey, I want to experiment here. I just want to give you let's just find out where you're at, Mr. Culy. He said, I want you to sit up in bed. And I forgot how to sit up. I couldn't use my arms to sit me up, And so he just had to grab me like a big old teddy bear, and he just picked me up and set me down he was a huge guy. He sets me down on the side of the bed, and he said, I'm going to time how long you can sit here by yourself. And I made it 5 minutes. 5 minutes. And the doctors that wanted to turn me off, when they seen that, they're like, there's something going on here, Another thing that happened, I'll share real quick. He said, he got me up a few days later. He said, I want to see how far you can walk. I walked 3 steps and fell. And so he comes in the next day. He says, I want to see how far you can walk. I stand up and I'm like, something is different here. Something is changed. And I started to walk, and I told him, I said, I want to walk outside of the room. He said, go for it. That's what you want to do. I walked out my door, started walking down the hallway. This is a guy who's never been in physical therapy, okay, who was supposed to be bedridden. I walked into the hallway. I walked 146 feet.
Wow.
Yeah, and then the doctor said, we can't turn them off.
Yeah.
There's something going on. That's a miracle. I don't care what anybody says. That is a miracle.
Okay, now we've been all through this. We're running out of time. We're down to 3 minutes. Through all this that you've been through, Kevin, what has God taught you?
Here's the main thing God has taught me. I remember one time a doctor come in the room and he said, Kevin, you're a lucky guy, you know. He said, everybody on this floor is dying. You're a lucky man. You're not supposed to be here, son. You know, and immediately God spoke to me and said, no, you are supposed to be here. I decide when you come home, not this doctor, you know. So I started watching. When they said, you're lucky to be here, I blocked that out of my mind. When they said, you know, you're not supposed to be here, I blocked that. I am supposed to be here. I'm on a mission. God has given me something to do and to encourage people that there is a miracle, that God still does miracles. And I hated it when people said, you're stronger than this, you're bigger than this, you're tougher than this, you can make it through this. No, let me tell you something. You are not stronger than 3 forms of pneumonia and COVID. You're not bigger than that. So I knew, no, I am not stronger than this, but God is. God is.
Yes.
If he chooses to be,
Yep.
he's bigger. So I think that's the thing I learned, not to pay attention to what man is telling me, but pay attention to what God is doing, what God is saying, where God is leading.
So through this, do you feel like your faith has grown?
Yeah. Absolutely. I had a dream last night. I was kidnapped by a gang, and they had somebody in the gang that was sick. And as silly as it sounds, they had somebody in the gang that was sick. They said, you pray for him. If he gets healed, we let you go. If he doesn't get healed, you're dead. I was like, man, I love those dreams. You know, they're so much better than the hallucinations I had, you know.
Yeah.
But I do. Yeah, my faith is way, way bigger than it used to be.
I would think so.
Yeah.
You know, when you know the doctors pretty much said you are going to die.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
But God showed you differently.
Yeah.
I am God.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, you know, you wonder what kind of effect it had on the doctors.
Well, my pulmonary doctor I have right now, he was one of the first doctors that came in and said, unplug him. We're just going to have to let him die. When he came in the office a few months later to see me for the first time, he almost had a heart attack. He was just like, Kevin Culy? You know, he thought I had died. He didn't know what happened.
God is greater.
Yep.
Well, Kevin, so good to have you here today in your testimony. So, you know what? Sometime you come on back and we'll talk about Scripture. I know you like to do that.
Yeah.
So anytime. And in the meantime, you all have a wonderful week. Thank you for tuning in to Glory Bound.
Thank you for watching Glory Bound. We hope you have enjoyed our program. If you have made any decision for Christ today or have any special prayer requests or questions, please contact us at 765-935-1435 or email us at hbcglorybound@gmail.com.